Looks like football, baby.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of the Fantasy Football Smackdown. I'm your host today, Jake Ripp. You can find me on Twitter at JakeTakesFF. And joining me, as always, folks, you know him. You love him. He is on Twitter at Kyle8, but he's with us year-round. Folks, give a big round of applause for Kyle August.
Thank you, studio audience. I dig it.
Wow, they all stopped on a dime right there. That was great. Well coordinated.
Yeah, no doubt. How you doing, Jake?
I'm doing great, man. How you doing? I see you're all moved into your new place. I used the term moved in very loosely.
Yes, it's still completely empty, but I had to get the studio area set up. I was ready to go. It was a busy week for me getting moved, and then you dump free agency on top of that. There was plenty to go around, a lot to talk about. I had people over helping me, move some stuff, and then we ended up just chatting, free agents a bit here and there. So looking forward to doing that here with you tonight.
Yeah, I think last time we spoke, it might have been like just Aaron Jones news might have came out like right then before the show. But besides that, we haven't even gotten to exchange words about any of these guys yet. So this is all going to be pretty fresh.
Yeah, this is going to be straight raw because honestly, I told you before the show, I haven't any other podcast. I haven't been on Twitter at all. Like, unfortunately, if you guys were following me looking for my instant takes, it didn't really happen. Like, I jumped on there a couple of times to make some sarcastic remarks, like about Deshaun Jackson and like how, he didn't actually sign anywhere because he's never healthy, so it doesn't matter. Those types of things. So, yes, exactly.
I don't know. I'm really trying to force in the sound effects early in this one.
Hey, you got to show off all that. I have no buttons over here. I can't add anything to this, so I'll just bring my voice. But before I get started, I want to give a shout out because I know he's going to listen to this. Got to give out to my shout out to G from the Aussie guys. Busted his hand up riding a bike. They say you never forget how to ride a bike. He might have. So I know he's listening to this right now, probably. So we got to give a shout out to him. Heal up quick, bro.
Busted up his hand riding a bike. How bad? Are we talking like Jason Pierre-Paul bad?
It was all bandaged up and swollen, and I was just like, what the heck did you do? And then apparently he's a big like mountain biker or whatever. I'm like, dude, I can barely, make it down a bike path, let alone I'm not going down mountains and stuff,
See, this is why I stick to fantasy football. I know that I'm safe in the confines of my couch and in front of my computer right here. I don't like to risk it going up on mountains and busting my hand up. To each their own, I suppose.
Which is pretty true because I'm pretty sure I had you on the SmackDown before we kicked here and we brought you on full time. I'm pretty sure I had you on the SmackDown last year, maybe with Addison, our boy Addison. And I think I had one of the front 5 questions was, what other hobbies do you have other than fantasy football? And you were like, none. I don't have any other hobbies.
Bad question, Kyle. Bad question.
I thought, man, I was like trying to get, the people to get to know you a little bit more. I don't know what I was thinking.
All right. Look, if you're not already, please make sure you are subscribed to the DWZ Podcast Network, where you're going to get to hear Kyle and I every single Tuesday on the Fantasy Football Smackdown. And we're going to be followed by Memphis and Jerry, bringing you all of the best dynasty tips and tricks to win your league this year and next year and the year after that. Great stuff from Jerry and Memphis. If you can't wait until Tuesday for Kyle and I to bring you the Fantasy Football Smackdown, we totally understand. Trust me, we get it. And, we have the solution for you. We stream these shows every Monday night on YouTube. If you're not already, go ahead and subscribe to the DWZ YouTube channel and watch live as we provide you with all of the best takes on this year's fantasy football season, coming at you with all of the hottest seasonal takes while Memphis and Jerry taking care of the dynasty stuff. Like I said, last time we got together, it was just Aaron Jones. So we've got much more to talk about. We'll start with the quarterback position, go through and talk about mostly relevant players, but maybe every once in a while we'll sneak someone else in there. But you might have to keep your Mike Boone analysis to a minimum on this one, Kyle. Save some room for the other guys.
Oh, I refer to him as victory lap after that performance a few years ago because I was so pumped when he let people down. I know people don't want to hear that, but too bad.
Well, I can't wait to hear what you have to say when we get to running backs. But let's get kicked with some quarterback talk here. And who better, man, than let's get kicked off with some Fitz magic. And I thought it was so funny. Like, you look at the Twitterverse and the fantasy community, and people acted like Washington made this incredible, amazing move. Like, judging by the reaction, you'd think they went out and they just signed Russell Wilson.
Yes.
Let's not lose sight of the fact that this is a 38-year-old quarterback. Now, he's basically been a backup in the league for 3 of the past 4 seasons. And, let's assume he is the starter for Washington, because I think it is kind of an assumption at this point. Like, let's not take for granted that he's just going to be the guy. I've seen crazier things happen than, Washington trading up from, I think they have like pick 19 or something this year. Let's not rule it out. That's all I'm saying. But, as it stands right now, where do you think you would rank him for redraft purposes? Because to be fair, he's going to have a pretty decent supporting cast in Washington. Guys like Terry McLaurin, Antonio Gibson, Logan Thomas looked good last year. And now, of course, we'll get to him, the newly acquired Curtis Samuel. So, where's kind of that range you think is going to be a nice spot to take Ryan Fitzpatrick in 2021?
Yeah, the thing, I don't know if I'm a Dwayne Haskins apologist or whatever, but Washington bringing in Curtis Samuel was more than they ever did really to help Dwayne Haskins, I felt like. So, like, they actually added an offensive weapon in free agency. I agree. I think it was like everyone just blew up like this was the greatest move of all time. Now, it's fun. I like Fitzmagic. He brings. Yeah,
fun is a good word, I think.
Yeah, the entertainment there. Yeah, for sure. And the fantasy value is probably going to be better than his, real life value. That's been the case for many years with him. I like that they'll have somebody there that's not afraid to chuck it. So McLaurin finally gets somebody that can let loose a little bit. But I think you're right. I mean, are we 100% sure he's going to be the starter? And can he carry that, starter role for the entire season? This defense is loaded, and they added some more weapons to that defense with adding a high-end corner in addition to that great defensive line. So at what point do they get sick of Fitzpatrick throwing 3 picks a game? When that does happen, because it's going to happen at some point. Now, I am excited for the fact that these weapons do have a QB that can, cut loose a little bit, not Alex Smith. We saw Logan Thomas emerge last year, which was great, but McLaurin and Samuel there, should be solid. So just Fitzpatrick himself, I'm right now, I'd have him ranked as a low-end QB2. Somebody that I would be okay starting my season with, especially if I went and my QB3 was somebody a little bit higher end, not T-Law, but whether it's Wilson, or Mac Jones, somebody that maybe I'm like, hey, depending on their landing spot, maybe I can count on them a little bit later in the season. So as a low end QB2, I'd be perfectly fine with Fitzpatrick, hoping I can get at least, 6 to 8 weeks out of him as the true starter, and before maybe my QB3 takes over. But what you're getting with Fitzpatrick. He's up and down, but we'll just have to see if Washington tries to reel him back in a little bit, just because they know, hey, we won this division off our defense. We don't need you to carry us. Just do your thing.
You prefer Ben Roethlisberger to Ryan Fitzpatrick?
Yeah, I would. I just think that he's going to have to do a little bit more than Fitzpatrick will as far as in that offense. The running back spot for Pittsburgh hasn't been filled yet as of recording this. And then, bringing back Juju, I think gives Ben a little bit of the edge for me, because his weapons are top notch.
2 more names I wrote down to kind of gauge where you're at here on Fitzpatrick, and we're going to talk about him here in a second. Cam Newton and Andy Dalton, are they both below Ryan Fitzpatrick?
Yeah, those are QB3s for me. And honestly, I think it was on the show last week because Cam, in addition to Aaron Jones, was one of the guys that had signed prior to. So we kind of mentioned it in passing as far as, Cam's a starter, damn it, whatever, because his passing numbers are so horrible. Don't get caught up in the contract money numbers, because what comes out is what they could make, not what they will make. And I believe Cam's guaranteed money was only like $5 million. That $14 million number is if he achieves all of these great things. So if he sucks, there's no reason for them to be like, well, we're sunk, right? We just have to we pay the guy, we got to use him. I don't think that's the case with Cam, just like it's not with a few of these other guys that sign bigger contracts that aren't really as big as we think they are. So for me, Newton and Dalton, those are like QB3s. You're hoping that you never have to plug them in your lineup, but twice a year, in those bye weeks.
Oh, sorry, Kyle, you there? You were breaking up with me for a second. Good.
Yep. Sorry, I got you.
I don't want to cut you off, but you froze for a second. I think we're all right. We're back on the track here.
We're good.
But when we did the Love Connection show with Memphis, I played the part of Cam Newton, and when I did that, I was convinced that he wasn't even going to be a starter in the league anymore, just because of how bad those passing numbers were. And then, not only did New England go out and say, "Yes, Cam, we want you to be our quarterback," but they went out and they put their money where their mouth is in free agency. Belichick knew that their current receiving situation was not an option for Cam Newton if they want to have any sort of relative success in 2021. Belichick's also smart enough to know that Cam can be a serviceable NFL quarterback if you play to his strengths, which, as we know, is kind of like that short intermediate area, that Greg Olsen area. I don't want to get to a spoiler alert with the tight ends, but on top of the tight ends, they go out, they get that deep threat in Nelson Aguilar. As far as dynasty goes, I'm still not very excited about Cam, but for seasonal, the rushing production should be there. There's a couple targets. Talk me out of it, Kyle.
Are we on the train now? I don't know. I mean, I get it. The weapons couldn't have been any worse than they were last year. And we'll talk about the tight ends specifically in a bit, but they did bring in some bodies, but I don't know if there's enough of a difference maker here yet that that I've seen. For me to put Cam Newton above, I just think that what you might get from Cam, you might get more starts out of Cam Newton. So that will probably put him above him at the end of the year. Fitz might get benched, like I said, for just being a little bit too loose with the ball. But when Fitz is starting, you can put him in your lineup, I feel like, and feel pretty confident with it. So I'm going to give him the slight edge and keep Cam in that, QB3 territory probably.
Yeah, I think we need a lot of questions answered as far as, was Cam, was he full go last year? I know he had that COVID stint in the middle of the season. How bad did that derail him? How much was it just not having the weapons to throw to? If he still has it, to a degree, because again, the rushing was still there. It's just, the passing. But what do you expect when you're throwing to N'Keal Harry and no one else?
Yeah. Yep. I hear you.
Let's move on. How about Andy Dalton, man? This is a guy that I was shocked found a starting job in 2021, even more shocked than Cam Newton. His longest active stretch with Dallas was weeks 11 through 17. And over that period of time, Dalton was averaging 245 yards and 2 touchdowns per game. And honestly, that's fine. But I'm not really impressed in the context of the Dallas Cowboys offense. I understand that they had multiple offensive line injuries, but when you've got guys like Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup, I feel like there's more than a few NFL backup quarterbacks that could produce those kind of numbers. Andy Dalton didn't do anything special to me to even warrant getting a starting job with the Bears. But the rumor was the Bears made this godfather offer for Russell Wilson. Whether or not there's any truth to that, I don't know. But apparently Seattle did not budge. It just seems so weird because, if that was their intentions, going after Russell Wilson seems like such a win-now move, and going to get Andy Dalton just makes it so hard to get excited about Chicago Bears anything this year. Are you optimistic at all about Andy Dalton?
No, I think you put it perfectly. The fact of what he did, by itself in a vacuum, okay, that's not horrible, but he had some of the best weapons in the game. He was always playing from behind because the defense was horrible. So he was always in a pot in positive game scripts for him to put up big numbers. It never did it. It was the first year in that system, whatever, but he had enough time where he was a starter from week 5 on, had dealt with a concussion in there. We got Ben DiNucci, hell yeah, for one game. But beyond that, yeah, Dalton didn't impress. I would have been happy with him as a backup in Dallas, for, a couple $1 million or whatever, but he cashed in. He got his money in Chicago. He said that they told him he was the starter. The joke, obviously, on the little Twitter experience I did get as soon as that signing came through, just because I had to check on my Bears fan friends, was that this is the best quarterback A-Rob's ever played with. So shut up, okay.
Yeah.
But
that was going to be the take pretty much no matter who became the quarterback. Yes. The bar was set very, very low.
Exactly. So yeah, the offer, I don't really know that the offer on to Seattle, they said 3 first-rounders. The problem is the Bears made the playoffs last year, so they're picking, around where Washington is, around early 20s. Then if they get Russell Wilson, you got to figure that the first rounder next year is going to be a little bit later because hopefully that, they're probably a playoff team again. So those, not all first rounders are created equal. We know that as dynasty owners, right? When when someone offers you the 104, that's a hell of a lot different than, the 110. And that's exactly what Seattle was probably looking at there. There was no reason for them to move Russ. But for Chicago, they're stuck. Like them and Washington had to do a very similar thing. They made the playoffs, which ended up being probably a mistake because they don't have the draft capital now. As far as in the first round, they got to either pay up to to move into that top 10 ahead of some teams, or they got to find some bridge. And for Chicago, I'm really concerned because I think this is the last move for this regime. They're all getting wiped out after this year. Washington has a little bit of favor with Rivera. They can probably weather this storm, but I think Chicago is getting blown up in 2022.
You excited about Jameis Winston in New Orleans? Because this is another guy that I'm having trouble getting a grip on. I keep envisioning old style Jameis, 5,000-yard Jameis. I just kind of put my blinders on. No eye joke, pun intended. When it comes to the interceptions, but what he was able to do in that Buccaneers offense, I know that it's unlikely to be replicated, especially in the context of the New Orleans offense where you don't have weapons all over the place, really. I mean, it's kind of Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara.
Yeah.
They just moved Emmanuel Sanders. Am I missing anyone in that offense? Jared Cook's gone.
Yeah, there's really, and even I believe even Traquan Smith might even be a free agent as well, if I remember right, but not that it matters. It's taken them this long. You're right. They don't have all the weapons that they had in Tampa Bay that, at his disposal. His second year in this system makes me a little bit more encouraged, even though he didn't play on game days. He's been around it a bit. I would be extremely excited about Jameis Winston if Taysom Hill wasn't there.
Yeah,
but that's not that.
Someone had to say it.
Yeah, that's not it. There's nothing you can do about it. Taysom Hill is getting paid way more than Jameis Winston. So doesn't hopefully Winston's a starter. If you told me today that they said no, Taysom Hill is going to be a sub package 10 snaps or 5 snaps a game, and Jameis was the QB, then yeah, I'd probably have Jameis at the top of all of these QBs. Maybe not top 12 like he was in Tampa, but higher than where I had Fitzpatrick, maybe that 15 range. But the way it is now, it's risky as hell because they at any moment they could be like, you know what, forget it. We're just gonna run the Taysom Hill packages today. There's no reason for them to have to lean on Jameis. So it is what it is. There's positives of him going back, but there's also the negatives of he has some very strong competition, at least in Sean Payton's eyes there. And yeah, you have to weather that storm.
That's what it's all about. I'm not worried about Taysom Hill as far as an arm talent, but something about him. Sean Payton just loves this guy. I think if it was 100% up to Sean Payton, Taysom Hill might just be the outright starter. But I feel like there's other people in New Orleans pulling him different ways, saying, no, we got to give the ball to Jameis.
Yeah.
But, it's just a super weird situation. And it's almost like I don't want any part of an RBBC. I want less part of a QBBC,
Dude, the thing is too, you gotta hope that, like you said, some common sense will prevail. When they knew Drew Brees was out for a month, okay, let's mix it up. Taysom's he's been here. There's no reason for us to reinvent the wheel with Jameis, right? We'll just go do what we were doing over here. They played the Broncos. They didn't even have a QB, right? They didn't even need to try in that game. So that was one of the 4 games. So that made sense that they stuck with Taysom Hill, even though we were all excited about Jameis, as was I. I blew all my fab in every super flex league I had, even the 1 QB leagues. I was so pumped, and it ended up being nothing. So I do think that there is a better chance for Jameis in 2021 versus that month-long fill-in role from 2020. But still, I'm not convinced to the level of I'm ranking Jameis like it's his job,
Yeah, I would have been a lot more optimistic about Jameis, even if they would have came out and just made a statement saying, hey, this is our guy, we're going to pay him. But they made Taysom Hill the number 1 priority. They kind of kept everything in the dark. We didn't even know if Jameis was going to sign in New Orleans in this free agency, but here we are. A few more names. Mitchell Trubisky, the new starter for the Buffalo Bills. How about that?
Hey, I'm hoping whatever QB coach Josh Allen worked with last year, get Mr. Trubisky in there, get him signed up on that plan. Let's go. Hey, you got to think though, not that Trubisky is Josh Allen, when it comes to running, but Trubisky can move a little bit. So I do think it's probably just getting a guy that's probably closer to what Josh Allen is versus most of the backups that are out there. You're not putting Joe Flacco in that offense. You know what I'm saying? So Good for Mitch. He has a job.
Very well put, Kyle. Jacoby Brissett goes to Miami and Tyrod Taylor to Houston. Anything to say about those guys?
I think, I just hope for humanity's sake that all of this Deshaun Watson stuff is just like not a real thing, because you hate to see heroes, get torn down, and not be who you really thought they were. And he does so many good things like in the community down there. So like, but if we're talking fantasy football on this show, we're not talking all that other stuff. This is their plan, I guess, right? Is Tyrod Taylor. So if he was for some reason dropped, in a dynasty superflex league that the free agent has been locked, like star him, right? Like keep him on your watch list just to be careful, because there could be a path there. But that, again, hopefully QB3 territory, you don't have to plan much. But other than that, man, these guys are just backups, deep dynasty superflex fodder.
Going into the running back position, again, we talked about Aaron Jones for I think a split second on our last show. I don't remember exactly what we covered, but this one came as a surprise to a lot of people, including myself. I don't think we have to talk about Aaron Jones a whole ton, because we know what he is in this Packers offense. He's a monster. You want to have him on your team. But how about A.J. Dillon? What are you doing with him I'll say from a dynasty perspective, because I have a real hard time seeing him finding any sort of seasonal value this year. Mm-hmm. But for dynasty, I feel like I kind of still want him on my team.
Yeah, there's definitely, now his price is even lower probably than it even was last year, which might not even make any sense, because now he's the definite 2 versus last, going into last year, he was the 3. He wasn't overtaking Jamal Williams because he doesn't have that pass catching prowess necessarily. I think when you look at Aaron Jones's value, he might even see an uptick, in the passing game. So that should make him even better. But the way the contract is laid out it was in essence barely just a little bit more money than if they had franchise tagged Aaron Jones twice. So there's an out after 2022, which would still put Dillon on the team for one more year, with potentially as the guy. But I think anything can happen. We've seen guys get moved. Yeah, if he shows himself to be a strong backup, he could start working his way into the game. So from a dynasty perspective, I don't mind taking a shot, see if you can kick an early third, see if you can get a panicking A.J. Dillon owner who thought that he was freaking out, right? I think we might have mentioned a late second. Like, what did you take a late second for him? I'd feel a lot better if I was trying to acquire A.J. Dillon for, an early third, just to see, especially in 1 QB leagues. I mean, those, you can take your flyers, but I wouldn't mind taking a shot on Aaron Jones, because at worst you have the handcuff running back to one of the strongest running games, in the league as far as touchdown production. So he's not Aaron Jones. He wasn't going to be Aaron Jones, but we were thinking maybe a high end RB2. Now, he's turned into dust in some owners' eyes. So kick the tires, see what happens.
Yeah, I was going to make that point on Dillon. The NFL season, the fantasy season is so short, 16 games. If Aaron Jones was to miss 1 or 2 of those games, the value in A.J. Dillon just for that 1 or 2 games, I mean, that's the difference between making the playoffs or not making the playoffs. We're not here to bet on injuries or predict injuries, but I mean, I think he kind of moves into that realm with the Tony Pollards and name the next best backup running back, Josh Jacobs.
Well, we were talking about Kalen Ballage last year, for God's sakes, people. So these backups they're going to get even those few games that can make the difference in whatever, regardless of your format is. And so I think, if you just went out from under him in dynasty, this is the lowest point. So generally then my advice is don't sell him. If you want to go buy him, now's your time. Because I don't think the price is going to get any cheaper than what it is right now.
I made a little Josh Jacobs joke right there that I think went over your head, but we can move on now we can move on now to Kenyon Drake. You can listen back to it, Kyle. You'll catch it later.
All right, good.
This one right here, man. This one had to have been the most devastating blow to anyone's fantasy value. I'll have to go back through the list and double check, but I don't know if anyone took a bigger hit in free agency than Josh Jacobs. RIP, 23 years old, Josh Jacobs. Man, what is Las Vegas thinking? I mean, he's signed for something like 2 years and can make up to $14 million, I think, in Kenyon Drake.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. He was definitely, as of today, right now, there's a few other names out there, but He received the second highest running back contracts on free agency.
Vegas already had a guy that he can handle and can proven he can handle 20 plus touches in a game, and he's so young. And now immediately, this is a backfield that I'm completely hands off on in 2021. Mm-hmm. Just like we talked about Houston's crazy backfield, I want nothing to do with it. And I hate to say it again, I sound like I'm like rooting for the injury bug here, but the best case scenario really for either of these two players is if the other one gets hurt. That's pretty much the situation. Otherwise, with both these guys splitting the opportunity share probably closer to 50-50 than 60-40, if I was going to guess, just judging off of the money they gave Kenyon Drake, there's not going to be enough work, I don't think, for either of these guys to warrant a roster spot on any of my teams this year. I mean, if you had to pick Kenyon Drake or Josh Jacobs, it's still Josh Jacobs, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, but Jacobs was already on when we did the blacklist episode last week. He was already on my blacklist before this. So when this news hit, I'm like, what the hell? Just crossing off, probably like.
Just imagine if you were subscribed to the Dynasty Warzone, you would have gotten that advice and you would have blacklisted Josh Jacobs before this news even happened.
Bam. There you go, people. Come on now. It's funny because for redraft anyway, his value might drop enough where I might be like, your fifth round Josh Jacobs, maybe. I'll take a shot. I'm not a believer in the Kenyon Drake experience. So I do think Jacobs is the better back. I don't think Drake is that, he's a phenomenal pass catcher, but they've been reluctant to use Jacobs in that role. So maybe that's just what he is. He's the pass catching back for Vegas, but that's a ton of money to spend. And the other thing is, and that it's tough usually, to follow and go back and try to see how this all shook out with veteran cuts and free agency. But the Raiders' offensive line has just been completely blown to hell. Yeah. So this used to be one of the better offensive lines in the NFL. Now it's shambles. So this is an offense that's going to really struggle, I think, to move the ball anyway. But when you talk about this running game, and Jacobs was already, I believe, he was like at 3.9 yards per carry or something like that. Like he wasn't great last year. So now, I mean, this is really not great for any of these guys. And it just opens another door. We're going to roll through some more running backs here. But when you look at the landing spots that did not get filled yet, Arizona is now one of those with Kenyon Drake not going home. Your Atlanta Falcons, which is my favorite running back landing spot, just waiting for that notification, not filled yet. The Jets, who I think has a ton of volume left there, and Pittsburgh. Like, I'm surprised that, with all those landing spots, Kenyon Drake went to Vegas. Like, damn.
Yeah, it's like nothing to do with the talent of Kenyon Drake that concerns me. I'm not like, oh no, Josh Jacobs is going to lose his job because this mega talent. But it's a matter of what John Gruden's going to do. Like how he's going to split up the backfield is going to totally determine how valuable either or both of these running backs are. Yeah. I guess it kind of goes without saying.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
Let's move on. Another one that I didn't think was gonna, or rather did surprise me. I didn't think Chris Carson was gonna sign again with Seattle, and maybe it's just a part of me really wanted to see that Seattle run game with choose my words wisely here, a legit, a real top-notch NFL running back. Just in case Chris Carson's listening, man, I don't want to be too. Look, no disrespect, Chris Carson, but you were drafted in the 7th round. That 4.6 40-yard dash you ran, it certainly did not help your top-notch status. But I don't see Chris Carson's value changing this year as far as his fantasy value goes. Low-end RB1, high-end RB2. I think he'll give you some big weeks followed by some not-so-big weeks. And again, all of this is definitely contingent on Russell Wilson staying in Seattle. Remind me again, what was that, 4 years for Chris Carson?
Yeah, they do have an out after a relatively cheap one after 1 year. So it wasn't, from a dynasty perspective, I'm kind of treating this. I got Carson for a couple stretch runs last year. And knowing there was a free agent, just kind of, taking the risk that he's back in Seattle. For me, I'm pumped, for 2021. From a dynasty perspective, I'm kind of treating this like it's a 1 year deal. And then going from there. Carson he's not old, but I believe he's 26. If I remember right, but and like you said, Jake, like he's not a talent. He hasn't been in this league because of pure talent. He's worked his ass off and took that job away from a 1st round pick in Rashad Penny. I think that's, that says something, but at the same time, like they could upgrade from him, I think, even after this year. But for 2021, I like it. I think he's right there as a high-end RB2. I'd feel really good about Carson as my RB2.
Man, you're right on the money. 26.5 years old. How do you do it? Well done. That's pretty much the majority of like the guys who will at least get a significant opportunity share in their backfield. But let's talk about some of the what I like to call thorn in your side running backs, or the 2021 vultures for this season. That's kind of the vibe I was getting as I was starting to read down this list. And we'll get that started with Carlos Hyde going to Jacksonville. And in case Jerry Sinclair is listening, I can admit when I was wrong. I thought for sure they were going to bring in some real running back competition for James Robinson. And, Carlos Hyde does not worry me in the slightest. But let's be very clear now. J-Rob, he is not out of the woods yet. Until, let's wait until after the NFL draft. After he survives the NFL draft, then we can do the James Robinson RB1 dance. But until then, I still think there's a chance they could add some running back depth. There's still some free agents out there. But we know Jacksonville has a ton of picks. So I'm just saying, don't start celebrating now, Jerry.
For this move, I meant to look this. And again, I've been like unplugged as hell. Like most of these things, like my initial reaction, Hyde was already in Jacksonville before, correct? Like he's played in Jacksonville.
Oh, has he been?
I thought he was already on the Jags like in years past, but it doesn't matter. He's got the OSU ties to Urban Meyer, so I guess after the signing, I was like, okay, that kind of makes sense. Like, I kind of feel like he kind of looks like James Robinson a little bit too. Like he's not, he's kind of a shorter guy, bigger build. He can catch passes. We've seen him catch passes before, not every year, but when he's been given opportunity, he has. So I thought that this though was the perfect signing if you're a James Robinson fan, because this is a backup to James Robinson. If they sign James White tomorrow, I'm freaking out a little bit. Not because of the touchdowns, but like part of the James Robinson allure is that he catches passes. Give me that. They're going to be chasing points. Give me the guy that can benefit from that game script. So I agree. Like he's not out of the woods yet, but so far so good, because even out of the free agents that are there, it needs to be a James White or a Duke Johnson type. If they sign, James Conner for whatever reason, I'm still banking on Robinson overtaking him. But I think Hyde is perfect for the James Robinson owner. And like you said, he'll more be a thorn in the side than anything else.
And it turns out Carlos Hyde was in Jacksonville for a short stint in 2018.
Bam. Hey, Carlos Hyde trivia over here. You're welcome.
Man, you're on fire. 2 for 2 over there from Kyle. All right, your next thorn in the side here, man. What about Jamal Williams? This one could have went better for DeAndre Swift. Jamal Williams, he's one of those backs who can kind of do whatever you ask him to. He can pass block. He's good in between the tackles. And you mentioned before, he's a solid receiver. I mean, I'm not going to act like this pushes Swift way down my rankings or anything like that. But, if I'm torn between Swift and another running back and it's really close, then this Jamal Williams signing might just be enough for me to tip the scales in the other direction. I'd have to be more specific on that example and find that just exactly that player I'm talking about. But Jamal Williams, he had a 46% snap share in Green Bay compared to Aaron Jones' 61% snap share. So I'm wondering if maybe there's kind of that same outcome in Detroit. And if that's the case, it sounds bad on paper, but still look what Aaron Jones was able to do with that 60 to 40 snap share. So at the end of the day, DeAndre Swift is still DeAndre Swift. He's an animal. He's going to continue to be an animal. You should go get him in every dynasty league. But I would have rather Carlos Hyde landed there than Jamal Williams.
Yeah, the thing with that Williams does, I think, well, is his involvement in the passing game and pass protection. So like if they would have re-signed Adrian Peterson, I'd been like, hey, all right, because even if he has to split the carries with AP, Swift is clearly the passing down back, right? He has that ability. With Williams, if the only pause could just be that, he's a little bit better in the pass game. Maybe Swift doesn't get the targets. Targets are more valuable in carries. But yeah, I'm not worried about it. It really, for me, I saw this as an opportunity. Is like if Swift gets knocked down a peg, like in the rankings, like 1 or 2 spots, I'll take advantage of that and I'll get him on my team. He's still going to be 10 running for me. In redraft leagues, I really like the upside. You need him to be the passing downs back in that offense, because they're going to be chasing points.
Those two Houston signings, man, doesn't make again another organization that I just want to know who's pulling the strings, because it just seems like someone's just making drunk trades up in the office or something. But Philip Lindsay goes to Houston. Mark Ingram goes to Houston. Both of these guys now joining David Johnson. Do you have the slightest idea how they're going to split carries? Because just looking at this, I'd say maybe they're giving passing down work to Lindsay, and then David Johnson and Mark Ingram are going to split carries. I don't know who's getting goal line work. I don't want any part of it. What do you think?
Yeah. I think the money they gave Ingram, the money they gave both these running backs weren't as such that they couldn't cut them. I think the thing with Lindsay is, despite his stature, he hasn't really dominated in the passing game. He's kind of at oftentimes he was running behind Royce Freeman as the passing down in. I know that David Johnson can get it done in the passing game. So I don't know if they'll carry all three. I would prefer it if Ingram just got cut and it was Lindsay and Johnson, and I feel pretty good then about David Johnson as a high end RB3, just because I think he's going to be the passing downs back. But when I saw Denver let Lindsay go and then Lindsay went to Houston, I think I was just more excited about Melvin Gordon actually, because now they brought in Mike Boone. Who cares? And Gordon, for whatever reason, again, I'm not here to talk about anything else, but focus on the fantasy value. His DUI case got dropped, so hopefully no suspension there. So Melvin Gordon looks like he's on the fast track to being, a running back 2 again. Now they just need to fill that quarterback spot because they were really quiet. They didn't go the Washington or Chicago route. They went hey, we're picking in the top 10. We're going to find our QB there. When Lindsay got cut in Houston, I was actually more pumped for the opposite side of it and go with Melvin Gordon as a winner here, I guess, to say.
Marlon Mack returns to Indianapolis. That's another guy I would have liked to see get a shot somewhere else. But yeah, you did the big damn it from those people who own Jonathan Taylor. I still have nightmares from week 1 watching Nyheim Hines get carries and Marlon Mack get carries, knowing what Jonathan Taylor was capable of. But you've got to imagine now that just with a year of Jonathan Taylor putting together NFL film that they have a new offensive coordinator in Indianapolis, right?
Yes, but it was I believe it was an internal promotion, so it's still pretty much Frank Reich just doing his thing. But yeah, they did lose their technical OC last year.
Nonetheless, I hate to say learn their lesson, but you've got to be able to imagine that they were able to go into the film room and say, we know who our running back is, and we know the guy that's got to get all the carries. Mm-hmm. I would have said the same thing last year, though, being like, this guy coming out of Wisconsin with 5,000 freaking yards, you obviously are going to give him the ball over Marlon Mack, and that just wasn't the case. Down to the point where Nyheim Hines is even getting goal line carries, stuff that just makes zero sense. Are you concerned at all? Because for dynasty value, it doesn't move the needle for me at all. JT is top 3 for sure, and we can have that Saquon McCaffrey debate some other day, but what do you think for seasonal anyway? Is Marlon anything?
I'm not worried about it. For me, I was more frustrated because I follow the contracts. I had put Marlon Mack on a bunch of dynasty squads last year just because I'm he's going to be set free and he's going to go somewhere else. And no, he doesn't. He just comes back. So that kind of stunk. I think he's pretty much he's a handcuff running back. That's it. I mean, I do think that he's good enough where he could have been a starter somewhere else. I don't know why he kind of folded so easily, took such little money and just went back to Indy to just sit behind JT. So I don't anticipate. Now, I think the one thing that you did mention there, and hopefully he did enough where the coaching staff agrees with what we're all seeing, is that there's really no reason. We didn't see last year how the split would have been. It was one game. So, at this point, hopefully it is such that they just lean on Taylor. Coming from Philly, Frank Reich was on a team that used an RBBC. Hopefully they just stick to the 2 guys. Hines can be the passing downs back. JT can do his thing, and Matt can just be that traditional, off the bench guy. But yeah, I was more disappointed just because I thought I would have loved to see Matt go to the Jets. Give the dude 18 carries. He'll put up his 75 yards and a touchdown every other week, and you can use him in a half PPR as a extra flex or whatever. But now he's nothing. So oh well.
A few other moves, guys that aren't really on my radar, so stop me if any of them are for you. Malcolm Brown goes to Miami, Devontae Booker to the Giants, Mike Boone to Denver, and Theo Riddick to Las Vegas. Kyle, you're good.
Brown's the only one that is like, he showed enough last year, like at the goal line and stuff. That's a running back spot. I don't even know if I mentioned it earlier as like an opening. That's an opening, right? Is Gaskin the guy? Do they use Brown? So if they don't address it in the draft, which they should, I think they should take a running back with one of their second round picks because they have an abundance. I think it's fine to spend it on a RB there. But then now it might open up where, okay, now the Rams are only a 2 running back, team versus having Brown in there and mixing him in. Because at times, to be honest, he was the best running back for the Rams for fantasy. So to see him move on, I think, kind of uncomplicates the Rams situation a bit. And then, puts it out there for Miami, like, all right, is it just these 2 or do they bring in another body? Which I think I'm leaning towards they're going to bring in somebody else as well. But I just thought that one was the most interesting, I guess, of this little foursome.
We're still waiting to hear on a few names to sign. Leonard Fournette, James Conner, Todd Gurley, James White, and Duke Johnson. There's a few desirable spots out there. You spoke about Atlanta being a nice one. It looks like there's a vacancy in Arizona. Is there any spots where any of these guys I just named you'd really like to see land there, or anything that would just crush you to your core?
my favorite, I really like playoff Lenny or Lombardi Lenny, whatever the hell he goes by these days. Leonard Fournette. I mean, he really came on at the end of the second half last season. He's the best guy of this group remaining. And to be honest, what really excites me is the fact that they have so many spots. I would love him in Atlanta, bro. Like I would love if he went to Atlanta. If he goes back to Tampa Bay, I'd be fine with that too. But now I really think the door is open for, now they're not all going to fit in a perfect landing spot. Somebody is going to take one of these running backs, a la AJ Dillon, and you're gonna be like, well, that's now wasted. Like he was a second rounder, you couldn't use him. I think you're gonna have at least 2 to 3 of these rookie running backs that land somewhere really solid, and then they're just gonna skyrocket up rankings. Like for 2021, there's plenty of opportunities for these rookie backs. I think in little less than a month and a half, we're gonna be talking about them as 24 guys that they're gonna land in one of these prime openings.
All right, let's try to fit in some wide receivers here. We got a big one right off the bat. This one just came in a couple days ago, still kind of fresh. Kenny Galladay to the New York Giants. And I don't think there was really a better landing spot that Kenny G could have gotten than the New York Giants. He's going to come in there on day one and be the unquestioned number 1 receiver. And, in people's minds, I feel like they automatically associate the Giants offense with being like not a great offense and quarterbacked by an average quarterback and Daniel Jones. But meanwhile, this Giants offense is shaping up as one of the more improved offenses in the league. I'm picturing big games this year for Galladay. I'm picturing a high-scoring matchup specifically in the NFC East this season. We got Dak back with Dallas, Fitz presumably under center in Washington, Jalen Hurts taking over in Philadelphia, presumably again Jalen Hurts taking over in Philadelphia. But the entire division's getting a facelift, and I feel like it's going to really start showing in the box score. But going from Stafford to Jones, seems like a minor downgrade. But I'm not forgetting about what Kenny Galladay is capable of. I'm not forgetting about 2019 Kenny Galladay, wide receiver 5 Kenny Galladay. You want to tell me why that's not possible in 2021 with the New York Giants?
I think I don't know if wide receiver 5 is possible like that.
And
I think when you
be a little rich,
I think for me, I kind of had him penciled in off the bat around 10 to 15. I think he has, he has the touchdown upside. I think he's that bigger body wide receiver. He's something that they just don't have there. As far as the wide receivers that they had in plays, like Slayton is a nice downfield threat, I feel like, and Shepard works the slot, so they kind of have their roles. I think Galladay is somebody that can step in, get you to the 8 to 10 touchdowns legitimately, because I do think that offense is going to bounce back. So I kind of have him in that, in maybe that Mike Evans-ish range, a guy that can get you the touchdowns, around 1,000 yards, 1,100 yards. I don't know if he's a 1,500-yard receiver, so I think that caps him a little bit. For me, I thought this good for him getting paid because he just had a season where it was complete wash. He moves in the division, so for me as a Cowboys fan, I was like, okay, dang. But as a Daniel Jones apologist, I was like, hell yeah, dude, this guy. They are literally like, if Daniel Jones fails this year, then they know. They don't have to question like, oh, did we give him enough? Did we do enough for him? Second year in the system. They added Ken and Galladay. Evan Ingram's going to be back. Saquon's there. He has, again, Shepard and Slayton. Those are fine role number 2, number 3 guys. He has all the weapons he needs. Now, the offensive line isn't perfect, but they have improved it a little. I think for Daniel Jones, that's put up or shut up. And I'm buying in. Like, if I use my QB2, I know I can get him as a low-end QB2 draft pick, and I feel pretty good about that, and I'm fine with Daniel Jones and get all aboard because I think the bounce back's coming.
Yeah, I love the idea of Daniel Jones as a QB2 this season. Would not have said that last year, but just the difference having that alpha wide receiver in the offense, it's going to elevate every single person on that offense, and probably no one more than Daniel Jones. We got Corey Davis, man, going to the New York Jets. It is tough for me to get excited about this landing spot for Corey, because if you ask me who I'd prefer in seasonal leagues this year between Corey Davis and Denzel Mims, I do not think I could give you a confident answer. Like, we don't know what this offense is even going to look like. We can make assumptions that the new coaching staff's going to adopt the Kyle Shanahan style offense. We can make assumptions that Justin Fields will be the quarterback, or that Zach Wilson will be the quarterback, or Sam Darnold will be the quarterback. But until training camp gets underway and we start getting some looks on these guys and exactly how the Jets plan to utilize those receivers, I'm having a tough time gauging a guy like Corey Davis. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, again, good on him. Got paid, had a career year, got a multi-year deal. A lot of these guys didn't. But for me, I'm with you. Like, with a lot of questions about the quarterback situation, you're in like this is the first year of this offense. Is that Davis played under a LaFleur brother in Tennessee for 1 year, didn't really play that great. So hopefully, being at least familiar with that system will give him a little bit of an edge, over some of these guys that are trying to learn it for the first time, and hopefully can keep, doing what he did last year. But I think that Mims still has the upside. For me, I would prefer Mims over Davis. I don't think, regardless of who the quarterback is, especially if it's Sam Darnold, pains me to say, but there's only room for one on fantasy rosters, in redraft leagues. So they're both going to be drafted, but only one can be usable. And, hopefully, and you hope they have a wide receiver 2 upside. So, I like the signing from the standpoint of there's targets to be had. There's opportunity here. But I just don't know that there's room for 2 fantasy relevant wide receivers. So for Davis's sake, I hope that he's the guy you can step up. But hell, he got paid, and 2 years ago, we might have not thought that he might have been going the Brashad Perriman route in his career. But here he is off a career year getting some money. So that's good stuff.
6 months or so ago, I was positive Juju Smith-Schuster was not going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. I would have put money on it. Now tell me, are you buying into this story? Because I am skeptical that Juju Smith-Schuster reportedly turned down offers to catch passes from Pat Mahomes. This guy's pretty good. I don't know if you heard him. And he's and in return accepting less money from Pittsburgh to play there. I know that he accepted less money from Pittsburgh to play there. That's a fact. But you think that he turned down these other offers?
No chance in hell did he turn down the Kansas City Chiefs. Like, I couldn't believe when I saw $8 million. I was like, "You mean $18 million, right?" Not that I would have paid, Juju $18 million, but like $8 million. Like, what? $8 million? That's all you can get? Oh. And so like, again, if you follow the salary cap this year, it went down. Some of these players are banking on it, bouncing back next year. This TV contract that just came out, the details are crazy insane. Like, you got to hope there's more money out there. So, and I don't know, I didn't actually dig into all this, but like, hopefully if Pittsburgh can't franchise Juju, he can get out from Pittsburgh and not have to play with a Roethlisberger-less Steelers organization in 2022. So there's that. Coming back for this year, playing with Ben is fine. I couldn't believe the money. There's no chance he turned down Kansas City, but this just makes it, unfortunately, kind of just I don't know. It's kind of like a wash for me. Like, I love Deontay Johnson, but he's a target guy. Then you got Claypool was kind of getting in the end zone, and Juju was kind of in the middle. Every week when I ranked these guys last year in 2020, it was like, all right, 18, 19, 20. I just rank them all together. Like, one of them's going to have a pretty good day. One of them have a decent enough day. And one of them is going to be slop. Like, so unfortunately, this kind of convolutes that situation a little bit for me. And I was with you. I didn't think there'd be a chance in hell he'd be back in Pittsburgh, but here he is.
It's funny you said that. I made the same note here that there's no group of wide receivers that I'm less sure about from both a seasonal and a dynasty perspective than the Pittsburgh Steelers. Because first it's Juju, the ascending superstar with 1,400 yards as a 22-year-old. Then it's Deontay. He's commanding double-digit targets every single game. He's the clear wide receiver one. Then Chase Claypool. He's 11 total touchdowns as a rookie. To this day, I have no idea how to rank these players. Like you said, I'd stack them all three together, but I don't know who I would put on top of the other, and I couldn't come up with a good reason why I did it.
Yeah, I'm with you. And when you factor in the uncertainty of their quarterback situation, even in 2021, but especially beyond, I mean, I think the only thing is, like, if I don't know, it seems like every year at least one of these teams makes the jump. If Pittsburgh paid up big to go jump into the top 10 and take their future QB, then maybe you could be like, okay, Claypool maybe has a little bit extra because you know what his quarterback situation is going to be like. But right now, you don't know which is better. Is it that you can get the hell out of Pittsburgh next year, or that you're stuck, or that you're there? Like, it's kind of thing. So yeah, it's, we'll see how this plays out if Claypool makes the jump or whatever. But for me, it's just, man, they got a bunch of wide receiver twos now.
Yeah, no kidding. What about Will Fuller? Does he fit into that wide receiver 2 realm for you? That's my try to segue. Listen,
go ahead.
I don't hate the landing spot for Will Fuller because at the end of the day, he wasn't going to find somewhere where he receives a quarterback upgrade, right? Watson's pretty much as good as it gets. But you got to love it for Tua, who prior to Will Fuller, he really didn't have a good, reliable, deep threat that he could throw to. But, having Devontae Parker and Will Fuller, I like that combination. And now you line up Gesicki at tight end. I don't know. Who are we talking about before? Daniel Jones. No excuses for Daniel Jones. I don't think there's many excuses for Tua this year, man. If he doesn't put it together, because these are solid weapons. I like to think that even Andy Dalton could come out and throw for 250 yards in this offense. But Fuller, he averaged the 8th most fantasy points per game among wide receivers in 2020, just 11 games played. I don't think either of us are banking on that in 2021, but what do you think is a realistic expectation for Will Fuller? A wide receiver 1 season would completely shock me, but do you think he can get into the top 20?
I think he can. As of right now, it's close between him and Juju for me, which puts him, closer to 24 than 12. Like, Galladay clearly is still the top guy in this group, even though Fuller obviously outperformed whatever all these guys did in 2020. But still a little bit of uncertainty there with Tua. Just keeps him a little bit further down for me. I guess, I don't know, I've been burned so many times. I won't forget the fact that Fuller can never seem to stay healthy, and the only reason that he didn't get injured last year was because he got himself suspended. So, I think I'm convinced he would have been injured if he kept playing football. Yeah. I think he's a guy that might. It's tough because people might overweigh the 1-game suspension he still has and knock him down a couple of spots. That might balance out the fact that he had such a great coast coming off a career season where maybe his price tag is fine. For me, I would prefer him as my wide receiver 3 and feel that there's some upside there versus a wide receiver 2. And I'm like, man, like he has to meet expectations in order for this to be a good pick. So I'm a little bit conservative, I guess, on Fuller, but I like the pick for Tua. They're giving him some weapons. I want to see him get one more in the draft and and a running back. That would be great. And then let's see this offense roll because their O-line is solid.
I was really hoping to see Curtis Samuel reunited with Urban Meyer this year in Jacksonville, but I suppose the current conditions in DC aren't the worst. He goes essentially from being the wide receiver 3 in Carolina behind Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore to presumably being the wide receiver 2 in Washington behind Terry McLaurin. We can hoot and holler all day about how Ryan Fitzpatrick slings the ball around the field, but when it's all said and done, this is probably going to be more of a lateral move, I think, for Curtis Samuel, maybe a slight bump up, depending on how much passing volume there is. But you got to take Curtis Samuel for what he is, man. He's a super versatile, he's a dynamic player. He's usable all over the field. But he's probably just never going to have consistent fantasy production. I can't see any point in his career where you're going to plug him into your lineup week after week and you're confident with what he's going to do. I think he's a flex play. I think that's what he was before, and I think that's what he is in DC.
Yeah, agreed. I think, like you said, I think it's either a lateral move for his fantasy value, maybe a slight uptick just because a few more targets. But I wasn't. I liked this just because it's like, okay, it's not bad. It's not the best landing spot, but I just want to. I'm interested to see as an onlooker, like, I feel like analytics sometimes is like a derogatory term sometimes. Like all these analytics guys on Twitter, like they have been hyping this guy up for years, and it's just like, sometimes I feel like there's no consequences for it. Like if you hype him up and he doesn't hit, you just be like, oh, well, the numbers were still good. I don't care. Let's see some production. So I just want to see some production from this kid. I want to see him get some opportunities. We'll see how it goes. But it gives a running mate to McLaurin, and one more mouth to feed though for Logan Thomas, too. So I think you got to keep an eye on that because he was a high volume tight end last season and made his bank off all those catches. So I like the move, overall. And it was actually one of the few players that actually landed in a spot where some people predicted him to. A lot of these guys, they never go where you think they're going to go. And this one, he actually, little OSU connection there now in that wide receiver room in Washington.
I want to touch on Marvin Jones for a second, one of the newest Jacksonville Jaguars. While I'm not going to sit here and plant my flag on Marvin Jones, I will go as far as to say he's probably going to have a super, super low ADP this season. And this is a guy for the past 4 years or so, he's been a 1,000-yard receiver, or at least he's been on pace to hit that, if he wasn't injured or didn't miss any games. He's shown that he can produce fantasy-relevant stats despite competing for targets with a guy like Kenny Galladay. Now we bring Trevor Lawrence into the picture, and you're telling me you're out on Marvin Jones? I'm just saying, I think he's going to go undrafted in a lot of spots, and he makes for a solid late-round dart throw. I'm not going to go too far into my Marvin Jones analysis, and I think I'll leave it at that. What do you think?
No, I'm with you. I think he'll definitely be taken third of the Jags wide receivers, and I don't think it's out of the realm that he's the best one for 2020. Like, he's a veteran guy. They have a ton of young players in that room, and whether it's because even Chris Connolly, he exited Jacksonville, so right now it's Chark, Laviska Shenault, Colin Johnson, and Marvin Jones. So he's by far a vet in that room, and he's a touchdown machine. As weird as it doesn't seem like that because he always gets them all in one game, it appears. But I wouldn't be surprised if he's the best one. The thing is always just going to be consistency with Marvin Jones. So let's see how that plays out. But in deeper leagues, I wouldn't mind taking a shot because you might actually get the Jacksonville wide receiver one. I wouldn't be surprised.
Nelson Aguilar is going to be wearing a New England Patriots jersey this year. Man, it's difficult for me to imagine Aguilar repeating his production from 2020. He literally had as many receiving touchdowns as Cam had passing touchdowns last season.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
Not to mention Aguilar, he's going to be working the deeper parts of the field. In 2020, he was fifth among wide receivers in average target distance. And while Cam is he's typically more conservative with the football. I thought it was neat when I pulled this up because I was going to try to find a stat at how bad he was as a deep passer, but it might surprise some people to know he actually finished fourth among quarterbacks last season in deep ball completion percentage. So, while he's not hitting the deeper part of the field so often, when he is, the ball's there. So, not all out on Nelson Aguilar, but I don't expect him to reach that 8-touchdown plateau that he hit with Las Vegas last year. Him and Kendrick Bourne are now New England Patriots. What are your thoughts on both of those guys?
Yeah, they're super deep 14 team. Take a stab, I guess, and see if Aguilar fits better. He is a burner most of the time. Like that's what we saw last year for the home run threat. I don't know that fits. As far as the deep ball accuracy, I don't know how many deep ball attempts he had,
That's what I thought was funny about that stat. His deep ball completion percentage was 53.8, which is a good deep ball completion percentage. But I was wondering, is that completing 16 out of 20?
Yeah, exactly. So we'll see. I don't think he's going to be usable. But same thing with Bourne. Like these guys are, if Harry gets traded for whatever reason, if that's something that's been thrown out there by some beat writers. If that happens, maybe one of these guys actually steps up to be 14 team relevant. But beyond that, no. I would have if I was a Nelson Aguilar or dynasty owner, I would have hoped go back to Vegas and run it back. But moving to New England, I'm not a fan of that. Hopefully, it's just enough that it gives Cam, it helps his value. That's pretty much what I'm looking for now.
Could you imagine like 5 years ago, a wide receiver combination of AJ Green and DeAndre Hopkins in the same offense? How epic that would have been 4 to 5 years ago. Now in 2021, I'm not as excited about it. I mean, Nuke still got it, but do you think that AJ Green is just dust? Because it sure looked like it last year.
Yeah, he's a complete washed. I mean, it sucks because he was such a these especially it seems like the big wide receivers. Their careers just fall like off a cliff. Like I used to love watching, AJ Green, Demaryius Thomas, Des Bryant. Like these were my guys, right?
Brandon Marshall.
And when they fall hard. And we saw that with AJ Green last year. He couldn't get on the field. He couldn't outplay T. Higgins. Even early on in the season, I believe I saw a stat like that he had like 0 receptions in half his games last year or whatever. Like this guy is a name right now. So as somebody just holding on to Andy Isabella, just trying to see if he could turn into something, like maybe that disintegrates that. But like you said, 5 years ago, this has been great. And I saw somebody put out there like AJ Green, DeAndre Hopkins, and Fitz, who's not on the team, but if he returned, like that would have been, 3 of the top 5 wide receivers from 2015. Like, okay. But that's all this really does. I mean, it's fun to do that and reminisce on when he was good. But for now, man, it's congrats on the $8 million. All right. He got $8 million. That's as much as Juju. I mean, take it and run, baby. Take it and run.
Let's touch on some tight ends real quick. We're at an hour now. We've been alluding to these guys the entire show. So Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry to the New England Patriots. Dude, I have gone through a roller coaster of emotions with these signings. When it was just Jonnu, it seemed like a W to me because I knew that, Cam has those tight end tendencies, those short area of the field tendencies. And then when we find out that New England was going to double down and go after Hunter Henry too, all of a sudden it becomes like this disaster situation for both of them. And I tried playing like the Rob Gronkowski, Aaron Hernandez comp. But if that's where we're setting the bar, then there's going to be a lot of people disappointed, and a lot of Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry fans that'll be disappointed anyways. While there's little to no chance, I'd say, that they're able to capture that tight end magic of Patriots past. I still think it's probably fair to assume that New England's going to run more 12 personnel, 2 tight ends on the field than any other team in the league this year. Otherwise, it would be awfully difficult to justify the amount of money they just spent in free agency this year. It would be like, if you were the Cleveland Browns and you signed Austin Hooper to be the highest paid tight end in the league, something like that.
It's perfect.
Which of those two do you even think has the better season? I mean,
man, I don't even neither. So neither of them have been yardage guys over the course of their career. They've been reliant on the touchdown. I mean, I guess if you have to bank on one, I'm going to put my money on Jonnu because I feel like he's I think he's more athletic. I think they can be more creative with him. And they paid him a lot more than Hunter. I was surprised. Like Hunter Henry signing there after the fact for less money. I was like, that to me seemed really, really strange. I would have been like, if you want me that bad, at least pay me as much as you just paid Jonnu. Age-wise, they're similar. Like, what the hell are we doing? This was the biggest middle finger to fantasy football of the week. Like, we got excited about Jonnu Smith, and people were digging up videos of Jonnu and Belichick having like hugs and all this crap. And then not even 24 hours, Hunter Henry to New England and sniped the two clear best tight end free agents. And now we're left with, in my opinion, neither. I want neither. Like these guys will be overdrafted. Yeah. Give me the late, keep pushing that we've talked about on the show. It's one of the top 3 guys or none. Just what?
Yeah, it's a shame. 2 of the better tight end talents in the league now just seems like completely useless for fantasy purposes. But that's the New England Patriots for you. Whether it's tight ends or running backs, they are going to ruin your fantasy roster. A couple more tight end signings here. Rob Gronkowski returns to Tampa Bay. Gerald Everett goes to Seattle. Kyle Rudolph to the New York Giants. And Jared Cook is going to take over Hunter Henry's spot with the Chargers. Which one of those really stands out to you? For me, like something about Gerald Everett to Seattle seems really nice. We know Russell Wilson. I mean, he was able to make guys like Will Dissly a thing. There was some other clown they had in there. Sorry, clown, if you're listening.
Wow. Yeah.
But he's made some, he's produced tight end numbers. He's produced solid tight ends in Seattle. So I don't see why that wouldn't work out for Gerald Everett, a super athletic tight end. He showed some good stuff in Los Angeles. I'm optimistic. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm with you. Gerald Everett's he's been a guy that I've really liked while he was with the Rams. He had decent draft capital, second round pick. He had the Sean McVay thing. Everybody was tagging, okay, Jordan Reed's, numbers are going to happen with Gerald Everett, and that just never panned out, but moving to Seattle, they don't really have anybody else there right now. I think he can step right into that role. And this is an offense that every single year, Russell Wilson puts up 30 plus passing touchdowns somehow. And we all wonder why, because they didn't let him cook or whatever for half of the year. But Gerald Everett, this is my favorite landing spot of any of the free agents. It's really going to come down to it. I haven't gone through all my rankings yet. Like, do I rank Gerald Everett above Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry because they just eat into each other that much? That's going to be tough to do. But if he's the guy, as the only tight end there, there's definitely some opportunity there. At minimum, he's entered the conversation for me as, the round 16 tight end. I can just tack onto the end of my roster and see how it goes the first few weeks.
Who do you want less, Kyle Rudolph or Evan Ingram?
Oh, who do I want less? I want Kyle Rudolph less. I don't want any Kyle Rudolph. I know I hate Evan Ingram apparently, but no Kyle Rudolph for me. I'll pass.
And then Jared Cook in the Chargers. You don't hate it because you like Justin Herbert. But at the end of the day, he's going to be the third, maybe fourth receiving option behind Austin Eckler, Mike Williams, and Keenan Allen. Is he pushing 40 years old now, Jared Cook?
He's got to be up there, but I'm
exaggerating a little.
Yeah, he's up there for sure. I think he's got to be over 35. And when you look at it, you mentioned it, fourth option, that third option at best. But he was really, and he was the third option in New Orleans when you break that down, But I think all this does is just kind of, it takes away from the luster of, Parham or whatever, like I think Cook does just enough to spoil that little parade. And just not Smith's.
Jared Cook turned 34 this month. Sorry, Jared.
Oh, dang, man. There we go. I was burying him already. I was like, he's got to be over 35. This guy over the hill. Well, maybe he's got a little left in the tank more than we thought. So,
well, man, we hit a ton of names on this show. You want to sign us out of here?
Yeah, I'll give you a chance if you want to give me one more wide receiver name, because I'm going to throw one more out there.
Oh, yeah,
the one that I don't even know if I got a notification on this guy signing, but I actually really like the Josh Reynolds signing to the Titans. They don't have anybody else in that pass, not even a tight end. They lost Jonnu Smith, Ferkshire's there, whatever. They don't have a running back that can really catch passes. For me, Josh Reynolds at Tennessee, we could finally see him hit that potential that some people saw. I know Matt Waldman was a big Josh Reynolds guy coming out. That's, honestly, that's how he was on my radar. I drafted him on a bunch of teams, and then they just kept bringing in wide receivers over him every year. So I get that he's not an elite difference maker talent, but if he gets the opportunity in that offense, even if he gets the Corey Davis targets, even though they might not be the same, exact targets, if he gets those opportunities, he could be a bye week starter type guy. So I'll throw that out there as my last name. Did anybody else pop off this list before we get out of here?
No one that gets me too excited. I mean, I've got John Brown on a roster still in a dynasty league, so I'm happy to see that he was able to stay relevant. So if he's able to maybe step into that role where Nelson Aguilar was able to find so much success, then I'm not out on John Brown. He's been kind of a underrated receiver over the past few years. Like, even going back to, like, he was solid in Arizona. Where'd he go after that?
I thought was it on Baltimore, right?
Baltimore, yeah. Looked good in Buffalo. I mean, John Brown.
Hopefully for all the Henry Ruggs owners out there, good luck, because if you get sniped by John Brown right after Nelson Aguilar took all your points, that's going to be rough. But there you go. Jake, great job taking us through all these names. A lot of names to navigate here. We still got a few names, some bigger names. I don't know about the actual fantasy impact, but we got some names out there on the free agent wire, some spots to fill. And as this thing gets, shakes out, we'll really get to see where these draft landing spots are that we really want some of these key rookies to fall into. So you can follow Jake on Twitter at JakeTakesFF. You can follow myself at Kyle Month 8. And be sure to subscribe to the Dynasty Warzone feed wherever you're listening to podcasts. We're going to be back here next week with more fantasy goodness. And of course, the Dynasty Warzone drops every single Wednesday on your podcast feed as well. So until then, you guys take it easy. Stay safe.